Okay, at 6:01, we're going to call this public hearing for the subdivision and land development amendments and also ordinance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks all for coming. Thanks also for planning commission members coming out to answer questions. Appreciate it. So the purpose of this public hearing, and just so everyone knows, third supervisor is on his way, so John Stoll will be here shortly. But the purpose of this public hearing is to receive public comments and answer any questions regarding the proposed amendments to chapters 320 Subdivision Land Development Ordinance and 360 Zoning Ordinance in accordance with the state municipalities planning code and pursuant to public notice in the September 9th and September 16th, 2021 editions of the Duncan Record. In accordance with the municipal planning code, a public hearing must be held prior to enactment of a proposed ordinance. The Board of Supervisors will be considering possible enactment and take a vote upon enactment of the amended Chapters 320 and Chapter 360 at the board meeting immediately following this public hearing. Proof of publication for this hearing is on file. The proposed amendments were submitted to the Rye Township Planning Commission and the Perry County Planning Commission for review and recommendations. The Township Planning Commission has been working on these updates for 5 years. And during those 5 years, the revisions were delayed due to updating the floodplain ordinance required by the federal government and also with delays with the COVID pandemic. And there's quite a bit of reading to go through here. So on the presentation, SALDO Chapter 320 and Zoning Chapter 360. Ordinances of the Township of Rye, Perry County, Pennsylvania, amending various sections of articles in Chapter 320 Subdivision Land Development Ordinance and Chapter 360 Zoning. The text of the proposed revisions to sections of the ordinances may be summarized as follows. Chapter 360, terminology, changes to these definitions: building line, excavation, lot, private road, and yard, front yard.
Yeah, yard, column front.
Okay, okay, thank you, Dan. Added the following new definitions: cemetery, driveway permit, filling, farm occupation, floodway, garden wall, historic structure, impervious surface, land disturbance, and land disturbance approval, pipeline transmission, private drive, retaining wall, and wetlands. Article 5, Agricultural District, subsection 360-23, permitted uses not referenced in the NAICS manual. Repositions subsection 360-23-23.m to 360-23C, 360-29E yard regulations, change reference of subsection 360-23C to read 360-23D. Article 7, Residential R1 District, subsection 360-48F, permitted uses, add or as permitted in subsection 360-217 chickens. Subsection 360-48.m, permitted uses, purposes to remove subsection 360-48.m, covering professional home-based occupations and associated signage. Article 15, General Regulations, subsection 360-126.s, use regulations, accessory buildings and structures, removal of relaxed setbacks for accessory buildings, and limiting the number of accessory buildings, their individual and combined floor area in a residential district. Subsection 360-126.v, use regulations, swimming pools. Proposes changes to require openings in pool perimeter fencing over 4 feet and up to 8 feet. Subsection 360-126 FF, land disturbance, added as a new subsection. Subsection 360-129.c, removal of this section for setbacks of accessory buildings and structures. Subsection 360-129.f, yard regulations, obstruction of vision. The words "or sight distance" are proposed to be added to the end of this subsection. Subsection 360-129.b, waste and sewage disposal, provides clarity for what is required by the township to address on-lot sewage disposal arrangements for lots. Article 16, nonconformities, alterations, improvements, or expansions. Subsection 360-146 decreases the nonconformity arrangement from 60% to 50% of the building's floor area beyond what existed at the time the structure became nonconforming. Article 17, off-street parking. Subsection 360-150.e, general parking regulations, and subsection 360-154.c, design standards. Requires all proposed residential and commercial property to provide a turnaround space when a driveway is proposed to connect to a public road considered a collector or higher functional road classification in accordance with the Federal Highway Administration's highway classification. Also, Article 22, remember, standards and criteria for conditional uses and use by special exception. New article, currently administration and enforcement. Subsection 320-216, cemeteries, added as a new section. Subsection 362-217, chickens, added as a new section also. Article 23, administration and enforcement. A new article number, subsection 360-221, permits, add land disturbance to the list of pursuits that require a zoning permit. Also does not allow a new permit for an address if the work on previous permits is not complete or withdrawn, and requires a corrected copy of the zoning permit application prior to obtaining a certificate of use if construction deviates from the approved permit. Subsection 360-222, regarding fees, adding a provision that all zoning and associated review fees and charges are non-refundable. Subsection 360-224, certificate of use. Final subsection to advise all holders of certificates of use that they are still bound to compliance with the intent of the ordinance. Subsection 360-225, violations and penalties. The proposed changes provide clarification of penalties and what constitutes separate violations has been added. This notice is given pursuant to subsection 69 and section 610 of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. Chapter 320, Subdivision and Land Development, Article 2, Terminology, changes to the following definitions: building line, excavation, lot, private road, and yard. Added the following new definitions: cemetery, driveway, permit, building, runway, garden wall, historic structure, impervious surface, land disturbance, and land disturbance approval, pipeline, pipeline transmission, private drive, retaining wall, wetlands. Article 3, general procedures, minor plans, master plans, and fee schedules. Subsection 320-17, changes to entire section involving recording of deeds specific to annexation/consolidation. Article 5, preliminary plan submission. Subsection 320-22.a, changing sheet size and font size requirement. Subsection 320-22.m. Hey, John. Subsection 320-22.m, replace the word issued with requested. Subsection 320-23.k, revise the subsection to read, provide a concise document prepared by a licensed professional attesting to the presence or absence of regulated wetlands, identified and delineated in accordance with current United States Army Corps of Engineers Wetland Delineation Manual and applicable regional supplement. Article 6, final plan submission, subsection 320-25.b, added a subsection requiring a digital file. Subsection 320-26.a, changes to sheet size and font size requirements. Article 7, design standards, subsection 320-31.d, streets, cul-de-sacs or dead-end streets. Removal of minimum standards for rights-of-way and cartway widths, and revised as required by PennDOT to receive liquid fuels funding and minimum right-of-way diameter 10 feet greater than the cartway diameter. Subsection 320-31.s, an additional sidewalk width of 1 foot is specified along with ADA requirements subsection 320-321.t, add to require re-permitting driveways affected by construction involving a private drive or public street. Subsection 320-37.f, stormwater management plan, providing for the exemption of stormwater and erosion and sediment pollution control plan for 5,000 square feet of land disturbance or less. Subsection 320-38.m, erosion and sediment pollution control criteria. The proposed change removes the previously provided minimum standards for rock construction entrances that meet the requirements shown in PennDOT publication 72M, RC-77M, or PAVBEP erosion and sediment pollution control program manual standard construction detail number 3-1, rock construction entrance. Subsection 320-44, individual and/or common driveways, numerous changes. Added Section J, temporary driveway requirements. Section K, modifications of existing driveways, and Section L, penalties and enforcement. Remove figure 320-52 to eliminate wood guide rails from construction. Article 12, enforcement, penalties, severability, amendments, and enactment. Subsection 320-89.d, administration and enforcement. Added a provision to require as-built plans. Subsection 320-90, entire section was amended. Subsection 320-91, violations and penalties. Added 320-91.b, added to, with a right of passage authorization to abate violations together with the option to apply a lien to such real estate to recover identified costs. This notice is given pursuant to Section 505 and Section 506 of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. Okay, any public comments or questions? If you do have a comment or question, we ask you please state your name and address for the record in preparation of the minutes, and please address all your comments either to the board or the solicitor, Dan. And we really do appreciate the planning commission's efforts in all this. Lots of late hours and days, and lots of work these folks did, so very much appreciated.
Do and redo.
Do and redo, and, yeah, so, thank you.
I'll start. Hi, Dana Cotton, and my address is 3428 Valley Road. My question is regarding the chicken ordinance. I guess it's a two-part question. One, is this only to certain zoning designations in the township that the ordinance is for? I think it was like R1, R2, and residential village.
That is correct.
Okay. And then my second question is, what about pre-existing conditions / pre-existing chickens? So there's people in the township who already have chickens. Are they affected by the zoning ordinance? Do they have to get a permit, or are they grandfathered in?
Well, I guess, were they already was their permit already issued for the chickens as they exist currently, I guess?
Was there a permit required for chickens in this township previously? I don't think there was.
It wasn't until doing it kind of outlaw, you know.
Okay, so,
Just do it and ask for forgiveness, so.
I think that would be subject to the provisions for excessive noise and nuisance, smell, sound, even if they are grandfathered.
Okay, but they do require, like, if I was in a residential 1 zoning designation and I have 6 chickens, I need to get a permit to have those chickens.
So if you already have them,
Yes.
I don't think it's written that way.
I didn't know that there was a chicken permit needed.
Well, that's because a lot of times they weren't required. That's why they were loosening the restrictions, because people complained that, you know, they'd like to have a few chickens, but their lot's only an acre, acre and a half, or 2 acres.
yeah.
And our ordinance previously said 10 acres, which was very
Or farm
restricted.
animals.
Yes,
Which chicken would
which
fall under.
included fowl.
Yeah.
That's what was in the past.
I'm gonna move on to another, I'll look through that, see if I can find the
Okay.
language.
And Dan, if you have anything, or Sue, anything to add, please.
You did a lot of the work on the chicken ordinance.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back.
Okay.
Dana, okay. Additional comments, questions? Okay, Sean? Good timing.
I have some.
John?
I got some. So, John Scholes, 150 Lee Drive. First, I do want to note that, you know, the ordinances were not viewable upon our own website here at the township. So, I know back in January, we were discussing contracts and stuff like that. You know, it was noted, oh, we should put these up on the website, and, you know, I remember you saying something, as long as the solicitor's okay with it, you're okay with putting them up, but once again, they weren't accessible. Thankfully, I got them through the newspaper. They were able to provide them to me. So I got the PDFs, but I do want to note that I see up front here we have appendices, the pictures. They were not included with what the newspaper had. So just a heads up that, you know, even if people went to the newspaper, they were not able to see the appendices. And I know those are in the definitions. It calls out, you know, the front yard definition. It calls out, see appendix, a document, what, you know, whatever the image is. They weren't in there. So just a heads up on that, because that was not accessible. So just something to bring up, that people were unable to easily access them, other than coming here 9 to 3 kind of thing, you know, according to our hours. So otherwise, I was wondering if you can explain the front yard description. I know that's changing drastically. You know, before it was not very clear what front yard was. So if you could explain what the front yard description now is?
Yeah, Dan, can you take, because I remember we went back, well, Dan Bodzek, is there a better, or you two?
Well, if you had the diagrams, that explains it.
Mm-hmm.
The front
Right.
yard is essentially the area in front of the primary structure and the setback line,
Mm-hmm.
parallel to the public right-of-way.
Right. Okay. And I guess my next question will be, is there any limitation for those people that do live on 850 that are 500, 600 feet back from the main road? Is there anything like that for it? You know, to say, hey, if you're, you know, I know that might work for in subdivision, you know, smaller subdivisions like Leawood Village. I counted 9, including my own property, that would already be in violation of that if we tried to get permits for that. You know, that might work in Leawood, but would that work for like Brad Sloop's property where, you know, or where his, I guess his son now lives or has or whatever, that, hey, it's 500 feet back. He can't build anything from the front of the house forward. It's 850. So, you know, is there any limit that we could put on that to make it that way? That,
Yeah.
you know, that you don't have to come in.
That discussion, I don't remember how it rolled out, how we resolved that.
I don't think any limit was established,
I guess I had
or
a
maximum, as the case may be.
I had a similar question, because that's kind of common out in the western end of the county, where you're up on the hillside and your yard's, basically, your house is on the back of your lot. But I think the way my zoning plan, or my subdivision plan, has our side yard being what fronts the driveway.
Like if you have a private drive?
Yeah.
Or a common, or whatever it might be that way?
That's how it says on our, like, subdivision plan. It has the front yard being what anybody looking at the house would call a side yard. But, like, I guess the question is, like, is this for properties moving forward when you're developing property? Does this apply to existing properties?
Yeah, because some of them, well, I know my subdivision plan has side yard. Now, mine's much easier, but some might have side yard as in respect to, say, a common drive or a private drive. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know this will affect a lot of people in the western part of the township especially. You know, do we want them all coming in for $750 at a zoning hearing board just to put in a $2,000 shed? Because they have such distance from the road. So, And I was also, I didn't know, why was the determination, front plane of the house and not sides of the house and that?
Yeah, I do recall that whole conversation, again, I don't remember how it rolled out, and Dan, I don't know if you have some comment to that, I don't know what the...
What do you mean by the side of the house?
And I think the discussion may have went like from edge of the house to edge of the house, straight out to the road, was that the front yard versus the front plane, even with the front plane to the road? So.
I thought it was a line that runs parallel to the front of the principal structure, measured forward to the setback line.
Well, I think that's what they showed. I think there was also discussion of what corner to corner, straight out to the, what was directly in front of the house.
I don't think it matters whether it's directly in front of the house or on a line that extends across, in the same plane as the front of the house to each side. I think it's all the same.
No,
Isn't that the way the ordinance is written?
the ordinance is written that way, and I was just wondering is there a reason we didn't do just directly in front of the house first?
Why would you do that if you're talking about the front yard? Because that's still in front of the line of the principal structure.
I guess it's just a determination of what is front yard versus
I
side
know
yard.
you participated in the discussions and
Yep.
the drawings, and you extended the lines from side to side, I think. So I don't understand your confusion.
Well, I just wanted to make sure is that what we are doing? Is that what we're accepting there?
It's property line
So.
to property line,
Okay.
from one side to the other side,
Across the front.
a line parallel to the front of the principal
Mhm.
structure. That's my understanding of it.
And so, going back to my question of, does this affect, say, like 96 South Drive is my neighbor, and their house is like right on the back of their property, and the entire front yard is the remainder of their property, so they wouldn't be able to build a garden shed there without getting a zoning variance.
I think that's correct, yes.
Yeah, and
Now-
that's how our property is structured also, that's...
Right, now, what if their subdivision plan says that, specifies that the front yard is on the side of their house?
The ordinance supersedes it,
The ordinance supersedes a subdivision plan from 96?
yes.
Okay.
Unless they have the structure in front of the principal structure now.
They wouldn't be able, they don't have their backyard's like 25 feet.
If they already have another structure in front of the principal
It's
structure.
just like they can't just
it's
go and apply for a permit, now they have to get a zoning variance is the issue.
And if it's
or something.
500 feet,
Right, so if you're putting up a $500 garden shed, you have to get a $700 variance that you might not even get. It just makes it real expensive to do things on your property that you thought you could do when you purchased the property.
like if you had a 300-acre parcel kind of thing, or 10 acres, but you're so far back from the road.
If it's farming, would they be exempt if they had a large parcel?
But if they only have 5 acres, they're not, even if they're farming it.
No,
You're only exempt if you're more than 10 acres.
it's geared to the principal structure.
So even if they're doing an ag use, they still wouldn't be able to do it. If they had 100 acres.
I don't think there's any exception for agricultural use, the way I recall.
I don't know.
Pull out in the front yard.
It's not specified on the yard that there's an exemption, but I understood that agriculture is exempt from like accessory structures that are used for farming are exempt.
Yeah.
So like a horse run-in on 5 acres would be exempt?
Now, don't take that as an
No,
official answer.
no, I'm just
I'm
asking,
yeah. I'm throwing out an example for you.
because I've seen that done before.
Well, yeah, so the idea is that you don't want a shed or something like that out by the road, so the idea was to put it wherever your house is.
Right.
Sheds and all that were behind.
Right, and that's perfectly reasonable for smaller parcels, but when you're set way back from the road and you're on a 5-acre tract and your house is in the back so you get the view, now that's kind of
Well,
a hardship.
hardship, but again, the spirit of it is to prevent somebody from putting a shed. I mean, what would keep it from putting a shed down by the road?
They don't live near the road. They're off the
No,
road.
that's what I'm saying, but.
Yeah.
That's why,
The way you're talking.
that's why I said, or an exemption of this, up to, okay, if you're putting it 300 feet back kind of thing. from whatever road you're at, or something like that.
I totally get the spirit of the
Mhm.
ordinance, and like, it's, you know, in a subdivision like Leawood, it's, you know, makes sense. It's just like a lot of these parcels, especially the newer ones, are being developed away from the road. Like, you have a private drive going back up to the hill, like, what does it matter, you know, as long as they're within the setbacks, it shouldn't matter, because they're not right on the road, they're not visible from any public right-of-way.
Dan, anything for the people, right?
No,
To add to-
it's written, I do not think that it excludes farms. Unless the farm did not have a house, and then the barn would be the principal structure. But you still have the same issue.
Dan, love it.
We did debate this topic at length at the planning commission, and the consensus was we can't cover everything. As you said, the spirit was to control what's put up in front of the houses, in the public right of way.
Is there a way that it could be reworded, maybe, so that intention is more clearly defined and it's not negatively affecting other properties?
I raised the question of, and gave options for making exceptions if the property was, say, for example, more than 5 acres total area. If you wanted to look at, if the principal building is more than 200 feet from the road, but the decision was made, and I think it went through Perry County Planning as well, just using the criteria of in front of the principal structure line, without any reference to how far the building is from the road or the acreage of the lot. So that was not included in the draft that was recommended by Planning Commission and comments received by Perry County. I think the concern was, what distance would it be? Would it be 200 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, or whatever? No matter what you do, you're going to have somebody that's close to that bright line that's going to be upset. Like you say, it's 250 feet, and somebody is back 260, and they can't put a building out front because of that.
Well, they can
They're
still put a
being
building,
concerned.
they just have to get a variance. It's just,
Well, the same as everybody else. But
Right.
I'm just saying that there has to be some decision made, and was the consensus of the way to resolve it.
right. And I guess my comment then is that having a blanket variance that covers all parcels maybe is not the best way to do it, and maybe this should be tabled, this specific change should be tabled and reworded and resubmitted to the county for, you know, if that's the process that has to go on. Only because it's like, there's a lot of properties out in my way that are immediately going to need a variance for any kind of rinky-dink structure that they want to put up. And it's going to be, you know, if you're doing a garden shed, it's silly. You know, you're a half mile back from the road and you need a variance for that, like, instead of just a permit, like, it kind of, I don't know. Like, I understand what you're trying to accomplish by it. I just think blanketing it over the entire township, maybe there's a better way to go and get that accomplished.
Yeah, I'm sorry, JT, were you raising your hand? Okay. Any other comments? Planning Commission or? Yeah.
I will. JT Groffensberger, 2725 Valley Road. I'm the chairman on the zoning hearing board. I know we did have a variance request along these lines about a a year and a half, 2 years ago, because the accessory building did extend into the front plane, beyond the front plane in the side yard setback, and they did get us, we gave them a side yard setback, but at that time, the definition of front yard was interpreted to be the front setback line, not the plane of the building, which is why that was thrown out, that part, but it was just a side yard setback because of the distance to their side yard. But yeah, no, and then there's also some buildings that were approved by other zoning officers, that the building is in the front yard, so there is precedent there as well of recent structures that we have in front yards, in front of the homes, so, but, yeah, I mean, there's no one ordinance that's gonna fit everything, unfortunately.
Right.
And I think, you know, we will get more zoning variance requests if it goes through potentially the way that it's currently written.
Well, I would be hesitant to send it back to planning commission again, because Sean, Sue, Dan, you guys have spent countless hours discussing this, and I know that very issue went back and forth, and so if we throw it back to you again, it's not gonna, I don't know that there'd be a different solution to the problem.
But isn't that the point of this public comment period, is, if somebody raises an issue that is of concern, it should get tossed back to them. And not discrediting any work they've done, I'm sure they've worked very hard on this, it's just, like, I don't know, I really think it's gonna create problems.
And I would like, my opinion being that I agree that this really needs to be discussed a little bit more. I agree that there should be some sort of distance, whether it's 200, 500, whatever it might be, because of those large parcels that we do have out there being that way. And I don't think there's any description showing a private drive going back and, 4 homes coming off it and here's your lot, that kind of thing. So maybe more clarity or something like that. Because otherwise it's gonna, I have a feeling those people that live 500 feet back that know, hey, no one's gonna see it, what's stopping them from, hey, I'll put it in, I'll ask for forgiveness afterwards. So, not that they aren't gonna do that already, but I'm just, it'll lead to, oh, I have to pay $750? I didn't want to put that building in, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, here's a building there. No one sees it, so, but,
Well, if the supervisors pass it as is, it can always be amended at a later time.
Problems come up. That's what we normally do.
Because there
when
may
we
be
start
other
getting a bunch
issues
of
that
variances in.
Come up because somebody says you can't envision all circumstances.
Okay, yeah, so for that, I think we would move on, adopt that portion as is, and deal with it with an amendment in the future. Yeah, it's been 3 to 5 years on this, and it's okay to delay it yet again. I do appreciate the comments.
All right.
Any other comments, concerns?
Yeah, I'll keep going. Sorry. I said, yeah, I'll keep going.
It's a big document.
So the next thing was the driveway, requiring permits for driveway upgrades. And I'm assuming that's because if somebody's going to pave it, you want to make sure they're doing stormwater, taking stormwater into consideration with impervious surfaces, right? My comment on that would be that, is the township's goal to get people to upgrade their gravel driveways to paved driveways? Because that's now the standard, right?
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my common concern is, by having now a permit and a hearing required, you're kind of deterring people from making those upgrades.
A hearing required?
Yeah, so don't you, if you are upgrading the driveway, say I wanted to pave my driveway, I have a gravel driveway. I have to now come before the zoning commission to get that approved, right? the way this, or am I like,
Not that I'm aware.
okay, maybe I read this wrong then.
No, it's the
Just be a driveway permit.
It's a separate application.
Okay,
Yeah, there would be no.
There's no interface with zoning unless there's a zoning issue.
okay, so it's just like apply for, get a permit and I can pay for my driveway, I just need to get a permit first. Okay, so there's not like a zoning review. And then I guess the last thing I had was, there was mention of, adopting the standards for PennDOT for all private roads,
Private roads.
all private driveways.
Was it the width of the radius and that kind of
Yeah.
thing? Is that what you're talking about?
So I guess my question is, does that mean the township is going to be taking on subdivision roads if they're brought up to the standard of PennDOT?
Well, I think you're not reading it correctly. I think what we're referring to PennDOT, as John said, had to do with the radiuses and the right-of-ways. It wasn't the standard of construction for pavement, correct?
Okay,
I don't believe so, I can't remember though. That was also 6 years ago, 4 years ago.
I think when you read that, Jim, it referred to the radius, right away, or width, et cetera. It wasn't talking about the pavement construction of the roadway.
Right.
I mean, in my mind, we certainly want to advocate that private drives meet a state highway cross-section in terms of pavement.
okay.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
It did, thank you. And then the last thing I have, I swear, is that having zoning documents online and searchable would go a long way for having people be able to be compliant with them. So, like, I think the way our current SALDO and zoning is uploaded, it's a scanned document, so you're not able to search it, like you can't do a keyword search.
No, they're actual,
Are they actual
yeah, Word
documents out there?
PDFs converted over, I
Okay.
believe.
So as long as people can, like,
To just make sure
open
they
the
are.
document and do a keyword search, that goes a long way for them to be able to, like, hey, I wanna build a shed, what
Yeah,
am I allowed
Search
to
for
do?
shed.
Yeah,
No.
I agree with that.
okay, so that's it, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
On the chicken question, it applies in the R1, R2, and RV residential zoning districts. And I think my answer was accurate when I said if they have an existing structure used for a chicken coop now, that so long as they don't violate any nuisance provisions, they would be able to continue that, because it would be non-conforming.
Let me throw a question out there. Suppose you have roosters which are not permitted and the roosters die. If you're the legal, in my opinion, you would not be able to replace those.
The non-conforming use has been abandoned by the death of the rooster.
Right.
Yes,
After,
I agree.
after 3 days of the funeral.
How long do roosters live?
Chicken corn soup.
There you go. I recall hearing them for 25 years. Any other questions, concerns?
Sure, I got one. I saw there was a land disturbance permit that was required now, and I was wondering, is that not, I know our dealings with Fry and how it was E&S controls, and that's controlled by Conservation District. Wouldn't that be the same kind of idea, that we're overstepping our bounds into somebody else's requirements, the Conservation District? I didn't know if that was or wasn't, but I was hoping to get a little clarity on that. Because I know the Conservation District kind of kicks in at 5,000 square feet, I thought, for some things.
Page 320-37.
I couldn't tell you exactly because there's like multiple locations. But I know there's land disturbance permit and land disturbance approval is in the definitions. There's multiple spots all over the place for it, so. I think there's a whole new section for it. It was added to the permits required. So I just want to make sure we aren't stepping on somebody else's toes. Somebody's now required to get 2 permits for the exact same kind of thing, is what I'm wondering. So,
Comments from planning or
My understanding was the land disturbance permit was the catch to the disturbances that didn't require county approval.
I think that was the intent of it.
Someone doing less than 5,000 square feet,
That's the intent.
Is-
which has happened numerous times, there's no approval.
Is there a minimum below it? And, you know, is it less than 5,000 is what I want, it's the first question. And is there a minimum below that, like, you know, you could say somebody digs a hole and now I know that isn't the intention, but I've seen the zoning officer do some things that, you know,
Is it
reading
correct?
between the
I
lines.
thought that the agriculture operations were exempt. For instance, we had the discussion, if you're tilling the garden, do you need a disturbance permit? And the intent was no, and I thought we made an exception in the permit application.
I think there is on the application.
Is that only on the application and not actually in the document? That's, you know, because that's where the zoning officer is going to come back to, not the application, and then, you know, in a year, the application changes, and sorry to have you search, but I don't have full paper version in front of me.
There's copies up here if anybody wants them. Two copies.
The definition we have written wrong. Land disturbance is both the zoning SALDO and the activity involving 5,000 or more square feet of grading, digging, filling, ground stripping of vegetation, or earth moving activities, change the natural contour of the land, or divert surface or submerged surface water flows.
I read that, do we have the zoning permit application, the new one, Andy?
I could see if I could find it.
I thought what we did was the zoning permit requires that permit for disturbance activities under 5,000 square feet. I think this definition over 5,000 square feet is correct. It requires the previously established approval.
Can you sign?
Over 5,000 would be covered by the county conservation district.
Right.
I have plenty of things on it. Find them.
Thank you. You're still thinking the definition's written?
No. No, I just want to see what else we have in writing. Because the only definition we have of land disturbance is more than 5,000 or more square feet. Depending on how it's written, we could do a minor land disturbance, less than 5,000 square feet. Just, I want to see how the application is going.
So if it was converted regard to minor land disturbance, anything from 0 to 5,000 would necessitate a permit from the township then, as well as a plan preparation. So if somebody was putting a shed in or a pool, you'd be required to get a permit and put E&S measures in.
What do those measures include, just like a sock with straw in it, like,
So I guess,
As-
who's,
like if
who's,
I'm putting in
as a
a
homeowner,
8 square foot shed?
You'd have to read the E&S manual and
That's-
develop a plan. to
Like,
meet-
that's a lot of work to ask a homeowner to do for a shed.
As a consultant, yeah, it's silt fence, it's compost filter stock potentially, it's seed mixtures. I mean, what is the limits of a plan for township approval potentially? If it's similar to an E&S plan approval, it's BMPs, seed mixes, schedules, construction sequence, and who prepares it? A professional engineer, or is a homeowner able to prepare something like that?
For a shed.
for, that's what I worry about.
Well, shed could be a very small.
A 10 by 10 shed.
Yeah. Well,
Go, let's
A
do-
large shed probably goes over the 5,000 anyway,
Right.
so, or
like,
gets pretty darn close
Not a
to
pole
it.
barn, I'm talking like a garden
Just a-
shed. Like, that's a lot for a garden shed.
A rollback delivery.
Yeah, they're gonna throw like concrete blocks on the ground, flatten it out a little bit and call it a day.
And Carrie, we are in the comments, concerns, portion of this hearing, so if you have any questions.
Should I?
You state your name and address if you have a question or concern.
I don't have anything I want to bring up unless someone's bringing up something having to do with me.
Just want to let you know, you can feel free to ask questions.
While we wait on that, you know, if we're getting something else, I have a couple other ones. One being, it said in the summary that section 360-222 was being revised to add no refund, no refunds for permits and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
One, I didn't see it in the document I got from the newspaper. That section I tried to search for just refund even in it.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing in there about that. And then, second off, I thought the idea of MPC was, well, if somebody pays $500 for a permit and we only spend $100, we aren't supposed to be making money off of them, so that would go back. I know even my one discussion that I got nailed with for my certificate of use talk with the zoning officer, even he said, yeah, they should be refunding your money,
Well,
if you use more. So,
John, if you could, since Stacy's been involved in some of this,
Mhm.
restate your question again, because
Yes.
with regard to, I mean, if somebody pays a certain fee
mhm.
and it doesn't cost the township, because that's all we're
Right,
trying to do.
and within reason, absolutely. Yeah,
So,
within reason, I know.
Sometimes when the township goes over, we
Yeah.
have to go back
Oh,
to the
yeah.
person, so.
Yeah, no.
So-
We actually are allowed to, but yeah, if it's minor, no one's gonna complain about $30 or $50. I just didn't see, in section it called out in the summary, 3-222 said about refunds, and I couldn't find that talk in there.
Somewhere.
Oh, the summer.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
What I do with-
section 360-220.
Yeah.
And John, I'm sorry, did you say you didn't?
I can't find, if I was looking for the word refund, normally the summary says the exact same kind of idea. If I look for refund, I couldn't find it, at least in the document that the newspaper gave me. So,
The hard copy you made.
so I mean,
was in the document I had when I did the summary.
That makes you worry.
Don't know, all I can say is it was in the, I could pull my other document, I have that, it was in there. Under, it was at the end of the section where we're talking about fees and permit issuance
Okay.
and that kind of thing, that's where it was.
Oh, are you coming for the planning commission?
You're
I'm
just
sorry,
talking
for,
about a regular meeting.
zoning set, this, we're almost.
That's Roman.
Oh, you're early, Mike.
You can sit, just don't sign that one yet.
Okay, when I did the summary, it was at the end here where they talked about records and payments and fees, it was in that section. But it didn't,
Dan, Owen, any comments to make too?
It's not in any of my drafts.
Okay.
it was probably in B, that's what I'm thinking.
360 to 22.
What do I have in the summary? That's where I got it from.
Yeah, you had been about the.
Yeah.
It was just a section.
Yeah, I didn't have that provision that all zoning associated review fees and cycles are non-refundable. I'm not sure it was under C or thereabouts. Because the rest talks about financial security, so it would have been under, D, the 2233, but I don't see it in this document, telling us why.
Okay, so Dan, anything we need to do about this discrepancy at this point, or?
No, because if you approve, unless you want it in there, because if you approve the ordinance as drafted, it will not have the non-refundable provision in it.
And I think we want the non-refundable.
You want to make it non-refundable.
Yeah. Just so it's clear to everyone, because it's not refundable, and just to make it clear to everyone, it's not, that's a fair thing. Other comments? Anybody else? Dan? Sewer? Anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Not trying to put you on the spot, just trying to give you the opportunity if you wish to. Okay, Dana, are we prepared to come back to, was it Dana's question?
I had the 5,000 square foot
Yeah.
question on land
I
disturbance.
Okay, I think-
Yeah, the zoning
I
permit
did, I
app,
gave it to Dan.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
thank you.
okay.
who gave it to this?
Dan to Dan.
Sorry. Okay.
There's a block for whether the earth disturbance is less than 5,000 square feet or more than 5,000 square feet but less than an acre, or more than 1 acre. But if it's less than 5,000 square feet, it doesn't say what you did.
So we need to clean that up.
Well, it'd be my opinion that if you're under 5,000 square, if you're over 5,000 square, you have to comply with the ordinance, which gives you the definition what you gotta do. If you're under 5,000 square feet, there's no real requirement. And the question is, do we want a requirement under 5,000?
And I'm glad you asked the question that way, Dan, because I thought there was also a discussion at some point. What do you do about somebody that does 3,000 square feet and then
Oh,
another
it's
3,000 square?
cumulative.
Yeah, but I don't recall if I thought that had come up as a question. No?
Well, it was an issue with the property on Pine Hill Road, that he did just under an acre, and then the Conservation District said, well, if that's stabilized and he's moving on to the next spot,
Thank you, yeah.
then it doesn't matter.
I remember there was a
So the cumulative doesn't matter as long as it's stabilized, according to that,
According to the town.
Okay.
even if you still have that permit open.
I think the intent of planning commission is not to single anything out. There's the activity along the creek where the government put the pond in the floodway, and it was maybe 1,500 square feet of earth disturbance. And the township had no mechanism to require that to be permitted. That's why we added the under 5,000 to the zoning permit.
Yeah, and the definition of land disturbance covers that, because it says, there's a separate clause that doesn't have any limitation by square feet for any earth-moving activities within designated floodplains, wetlands,
The census.
steep slopes, or in or adjacent to any water course, regardless of the number of square feet involved.
Mhm. Yes, that's what I remember you guys talking about.
Clear on that, at this point? That's okay.
So you don't need a permit if you're less than 5,000 unless you're in those sensitive areas, correct?
I think that's the way the
Okay.
language would be.
All right, and then I guess the second thing is, JT noted, is that the same permit in essence than what the Conservation District takes care of, as you said, right? It's 5,000 is what they handle, so.
That's what they,
But, you know, is that a overlap of our reach for theirs, as long as that's determined. Okay. All right, and then my last one that I have is about accessory buildings or structures, and this is, it's an existing, but it's actually an issue that we had already. Zoning officer determined that, oh, it's okay to keep a intermodal container, even though our ordinance says about, you know, trailers with or without wheels, and then converting them, is that allowed, is that not allowed? I didn't see any clarification on that, since it was an issue earlier this year, so I just wanted to,
It was an issue.
yes.
Right on that.
So I didn't know if we were gonna put any clarification in now, to try and help that clarification, even though it seems clear, but,
hopefully, we won't have that question come up again, because some would say that was a strange reading of that section, to say that you could convert an intermodal to a shed by doing certain things. There's no criteria for converting it.
yeah, should we
It
put,
shall not be used
yeah,
except for temporary purposes.
right, and should we put something that says you may not convert or something like that? I didn't know if we wanted to put that, you know, I know, it all comes down to the zoning officer, and, yes.
No, that does raise an interesting question, because forgetting the intermodal container,
Mm-hmm. Because we say pods or trailers with or without wheels.
or some strange
Mhm.
thing that somebody purchased. I mean,
Mhm.
what constitutes the shed, a legit shed versus,
If you have something that is built, a separate structure as a container, with an intermodal, tractor trailer with wheels removed, a pod, those types of pre-constructed items, I think, is what it's after, and they can only be there for a temporary period.
yeah, but
And once it's a pod, it's a pod,
Mhm.
whether you paint it green, pink, black, or yellow. And I was surprised by that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
As
Weren't we all?
I think of some others.
The property owner with that intermodal did ask the question of, hey, there's companies out there that sell these, and they sell them as sheds. So how does the township think they can tell me this is not a shed now when there's companies out there,
Because the companies don't run Rye Township.
yeah.
They just make money off people
Yeah.
trying to skirt zoning laws.
Mhm.
They should, if they would came forward, they
That's
would
what
know.
they do.
Oh, yeah, no,
But I got a question on that. Didn't Rye Township now set precedent for allowing that
No,
by approving that?
no.
It was
It's gone.
removed? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it
It
was.
it was partially authorized with a letter, but never an actual permit to convert, it seemed like, unless something happened after I left, so.
No, we did have a
Did not.
discussion with the property owner and came to an agreement that, and they removed it, which,
Mm.
We're in a little awkward position at the time.
Mm.
yeah.
Is there a provision that doesn't allow the conversion of a container into a container home? With the new rage of container homes? Or a container camp?
they have to, I guess if they could satisfy the UCC, they could do it, right?
Get a PIU permit for
Yeah.
it. But I guess you could say,
Plumbing, electrical, the whole construction, installation. all
and
that.
we're only not allowing it in a temporary configuration for an accessory building.
Yeah.
Another amendment is on the way. Yes, time we get, yeah, I'm sorry, so did we, any other questions, concerns?
I guess the only thing I have is, what are we doing about the refund? Is that just adding in and voting, or, okay?
I was gonna make a motion, do you need a motion, right, to adopt?
No, this will be at our meeting, this is just a hearing.
Oh, that's right, okay, sorry, I had myself, well, we would, well, yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Because it'll be contingent upon, correct,
Right,
addressing that refund issue. Okay, any other questions, concerns? Again, thanks to planning commission members and Dan's leadership and everybody's involvement in that, 'cause